Broadcasting from the heart of the nation, in the Hoosier Media Network studios, the next generation in conservative talk radio. This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Why, yes, it is. What is up, my friends? Welcome into it. Happy weekend to you. Another one, ready to rock and roll. How is your Christmas? How is your Hanukkah, whatever you celebrate? So great to have you as you continue on with your holiday celebration. It's been such a weird one this year with the fact that the holidays kind of fell right in the middle of the week. So you want to take the entire week off. Your boss won't let you take the entire week off. But regardless of how you celebrate, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year to you, Happy Hanukkah, Happy, I guess, Kwanzaa's here, or Winter Solstice, or Yule, or whatever you celebrate. I don't care. So great to have you along for the ride. Your Millennial General reporting for duty like we do every single weekend. And even though we are in holiday season, there is still a lot to talk about and to get to, which will break all of it down here on the program for your week in review. You haven't been paying attention, so we'll recap it for you on the program. First and foremost, my name is Andy Hoosier. This is the Voice of Reason, broadcasting out of the heart of the nation here at the Hoosier Media Network studios, based out of Wichita, Kansas. We are all over the country, though, multiple radio stations, so many great affiliates out there, and TV, live streaming, podcasting, however you watch or listen to the program. Welcome aboard.
We'll do it live.
Your Millennial General reporting for duty. All right, so coming up bottom of the hour, we have Ethan Watson on the program. He is a contributor and author, or writer at least, to the Young Voices. He's got a new op-ed out talking about Generation Z, the young generation, and where they're getting their information from: social media and news outlets, podcasting, talk radio. Where is media going from here? And can the media get themselves back on track? Can they revive themselves after the horrendous, I guess you want to call it, personal reputation that they've destroyed over the election in 2024? So we'll talk about all that and more coming up in just a little bit. Chad, our producer down in Dallas, Merry Christmas to you, my friend. Happy New Year. Can you believe we are almost to the end of the year, man? This is wild, the fact that we're going into 2025. And I have a feeling that 2025 is going to be more entertaining, wild, out there, insane than what 2024 was. Why? Because we have Donald Trump coming in. We have the media rebuilding themselves. We have Democrats throwing temper tantrums. We have drones that apparently are now just disappearing. We're not talking about those anymore. We have other ridiculousness that we'll get to here in just a moment. But I think that 2025 is going to be a year of where we say, oh, hold our peppermint tea and let's get into a new year. Also, our executive producer, Trumpy Bear, sitting in studio with me at the Hoosier Media Network studios as we get ready for a bigly show, my friend.
And I think we're going to make it bigly.
Every single weekend. All right, first and foremost, over the week, you may not have been paying attention. Hopefully you were not, because it was the holiday season. I will say that we had a fantastic Christmas celebration here at the Hoosier family. Mrs. Voice of Reason, Little Voice of Reason, for those that may be relatively new to the show, my wife and my daughter, that's what their names are, Mrs. Voice of Reason, Little Voice of Reason. I'm Mr. Voice of Reason, I guess. That we had a wonderful Christmas. Little Voice of Reason, she is 10. She loves this time of year. We have watched Home Alone more times than I can count, and it's starting to drive me nuts. I understand. I understand it, though, because that was my favorite movie as a kid growing up as well, so I totally understand, and it makes me warm and happy inside that she enjoys the same nostalgic videos and movies that we did growing up. But I got to admit, Home Alone's starting to get on my nerves just a little bit. Just a little bit. Although I will give Disney credit, on Disney Plus, the Home Alone 2 that they have on there still has the clip of Donald Trump in the movie, when most other networks have actually cut that little part of the movie out because they didn't want to actually give Donald Trump any credit. So I will give them credit. They do have it on there. And we've seen it so many times that I could quote that entire movie from now on. But it was a great holiday. Chad, you and I were just talking off the air a little bit before we came on that we had, the dad gifts this year, which now I'm starting to feel a little bit old, and I'm okay with it. But I'm starting to feel a little bit on the older side because I totally got the ultimate dad gifts, and I was excited about it. I got T-shirts. I got new shoes. I got beef jerky. I got an assorted thing of different nuts, which makes me happy. I got a book, and I did get a video game. That was my one still like, oh, I'm still kind of a kid. I did get a video game, but outside of that, it was all adult things like T-shirts and nuts and beef jerky, totally dad gifts, and I was excited about it. I was happy about that. So it was great. Hopefully everybody else's was wonderful as well. And I am this program here, because we're in that limbo between Christmas and New Year's. We're in the limbo of what's going to happen yet before we kick off 2025, which I am really excited about. We have new affiliates coming on in the next week or two. I can't wait to announce those all over the country, and some other great information as we finally, we're counting down the days until Donald Trump officially becomes president of the United States. Again, the countdown has begun. That being said, on Tuesday this week, as we do our week in review,
it's your week in review.
And we look at what Joe Biden's been doing while he tries to pretend to be president for the last few days, really the last month. We always wondered, I asked you the question when the election happened in November, Democrats are playing way too nice. Democrats are real, okay, after he's an authoritarian, he's a Nazi, he's the most horrible human being on the face of the earth, then what are they going to do to sabotage Donald Trump going into the new administration? Because they started asking for the peaceful transfer of power. We need to accept the results of the election, which they didn't have much of an option other than that to do, but they were still going to throw the wrench in the system because that's what progressives like to do. Democrats don't just roll over and say, well, I guess we lost. Some people didn't want our agenda. They don't do that. And we're starting to figure out exactly what happened. So on Tuesday, on Christmas Eve, if you did not pay attention, Joe Biden ended up signing more than 50, according to the media, they say 50 laws, bills into law. They're not bills because they weren't passed by Congress. So, I mean, most of them were executive actions or executive orders, and there is a slight difference there. I don't have time to get into it now, but he was signing a whole bunch of different things on Tuesday, Christmas Eve. Chad, jump on here for just a moment. Did you know, Chad, that the eagle, the bald eagle, was not the official bird of the United States until Joe Biden actually signed that bill on Tuesday of this week? Did you know that that wasn't actually the official bird of the U.S.?
I did not know that.
I know, right? I didn't either. But now it is. So now we can say the bald eagle is officially the bird of America, which is cool. I don't know why it wasn't done that before and why Joe Biden felt like doing it now. It seems like now he's tidying up the loose ends. And by loose ends, outside of signing 50 bills that no one got to pay attention to or knew that he was doing, he also has been signing many different pardons and commutations for individuals that are in federal prison, according to Fox News, as he's been signing them left and right. Joe Manchin, senator who's Democrat turned independent, has been critical of it as well, saying that this is horribly misguided and insulting for what he's been doing. Not only pardoning Chinese spies or pardoning individuals that had massive amounts of child pornography on their computers that were also Chinese residents, but also commuting more than 37 different cases of individuals that have life sentences in this nation for committing crimes, raping individuals, killing individuals, and some family members who have actually been part of the victims of their family members being assaulted by these people weren't very happy about it.
Commit that crime. Brandon Council did. He made that choice that day, a crime that is punishable by the death penalty. 12 jurors unanimously voted for the death penalty. That is what was fair, and Biden took that away from us.
Yeah, so that was the family, by the way, of Samantha Burns, who died back in 2002 at the age of 19, according to the report by an individual who was in jail, who has now been commuted by Joe Biden in commuting his sentence, who had the death penalty and who had multiple life sentences from jurors. And I don't know about you, but that's kind of not only a slap in the face for the victims' families who are trying to celebrate a happy holiday and now get this kind of news, but to me, it also kind of is a slap in the face for the entire judicial system, is it not? I mean, we have a juror of our peers that are supposed to look at certain cases. They've made a decision of horrendous acts. Now, Joe Biden's been pardoning and commuting more people than any other president since, I believe, Jimmy Carter, which is how many he's just been going. Apparently he thinks it's this magic marker. He's just trying to draw in his basement, trying to just have fun, and people are just citing papers in front of him while he's signing his name, thinking that it's really cool. I don't know what the situation is. We know that he's not really there, if you know what I mean. But why all of these individuals? Why these criminals? Why really, really bad people that he's just signing? Donald Trump, when he left, he pardoned a few people, but it was like They got arrested because they had a small portion of marijuana on them. It wasn't even for intent to distribute. And Kim Kardashian and Kanye West, when they were still together, they went to Donald Trump and was like, hey, can we commute these people? And he did. Outside of that, it wasn't really a thing. So you ask Andy, what does that have to do with sabotaging the Trump administration? I would say that if you're commuting rapists and murderers and all these major criminals that had life sentences and putting them back on the streets across the nation, that would be a sign of, let's see how much anarchy we can cause in the streets of America. So when Donald Trump takes office, we can say, look, crime's back up. Now, remember, they redefined what exactly crime is in the nation, because the term, according to some of the civil rights activists in the nation, like Al Sharpton and some of the others, they tried to redefine the term of crime and the definition of crime to say, well, that way crime was intended to go towards, I guess, black people or minorities or something. And if we just change the term of what crime and the definition of crime actually is, then they won't be committing crimes any longer. So you can go and loot a store, and it'll just be a slight misdemeanor, a little slap on the wrist. It's not really worth law enforcement to come and get you, and therefore we can just go about our day, but the crime's down. Well, no, it's not. They're doing a lot of crazy stuff out there. No, crime's down. Don't worry about it. It's not defined as a crime any longer. It's totally all right. These aren't the droids you're looking for. Like, that's the world we're living in. So the commuting, the pardoning of Joe Biden with all of these different cases really throughout this week and the week previous, this has been a sign of, let's see how much devastation we can do under the new administration. Then we re-implement the definitions of crime, and then all of a sudden these federal agencies come back and they say, ha, look at that, crime rates are dramatically higher now that Donald Trump's in office because he can't handle being the executive of the nation. Very concerning. Now, of course, they're going to throw the sob story in there with, the immigration, the mass deportation, and all that garbage as well. But just the little things, the breadcrumbs, man, of what Democrats are trying to do going into a new administration. That being said, there was also some other big news this week.
It's your week in review.
Another one as well, and social media back in the news headlines as well, with TikTok apparently being accepted by the Supreme Court for the hearing on whether there should be an immediate hearing to halt the suspension of TikTok in the United States. For those that don't know, TikTok is set to be banned in the country on January 19th of 2025, which is one day before the inauguration of Donald Trump. Donald Trump and Elon Musk, by the way, have both advocated for the continuation of TikTok in the nation. I am in support of that as well. I know some people aren't. We can have that conversation when we come back from the break in a minute. But I believe that we need to have TikTok, and there's a reason for that we'll get to here shortly. But they have apparently this week, Donald Trump inviting the CEO of TikTok to Mar-a-Lago during the Christmas week to discuss ways where they can put an emergency halt on the banning of TikTok, with the Supreme Court announcing they will officially take up this case and look at it here soon, so that way they can have an official decision before January 19th, when that official ban of TikTok goes into effect across the nation. What does that tell you? That tells you that we have a court system outside of like what they're trying to do with the sabotaging of the Department of Justice and the legal system all across the board with the commutations and the pardonings, that the court system itself, the Supreme Court, actually wanting to take a look at why we're wanting to ban TikTok in the first place. Well, Andy, they're surveilling us, right? Sure. Okay, if that's what your concern is, if that's what you think is going to be the major issue here, I'd like to reiterate what our own government's done with our own social media sites that are based here in the United States. We'll get to that in just a moment. Could we see TikTok remain in the United States? And do you think it's a good idea or a bad idea? We'll get to some of that and more coming up around the corner. It's your weekend edition of The Voice of Reason. Got a lot to talk about. Stay here.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier. It's your Patriot on the Prairie. This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Yes, it is. Welcome back into it. 24 minutes past the hour. So many great radio stations all over the country. We love you guys to death. Happy New Year. Merry Christmas to you. Happy Hanukkah. Happy winter solstice or Yule. Happy, whatever else holidays there are out there. I don't really care, but it doesn't matter. We're going into 2025, which I'm excited about. It's going to be a great year. I am looking forward to all the great things we get to see. I am eternally optimistic, as you know, although there is some interbickering. Republicans have always found a way to eat themselves up when they have an opportunity for leadership and we start to move in the right direction. And then we get really giddy and excited. And we get this weird tunnel vision where it's either our way or the highway, and this is the only way to fix it. And if you don't get on board with my idea of fixing it, then you're just as progressive and ridiculous as the other people, and you're not worth my time. And then we start eating amongst ourselves, and Republicans kind of fail and collapse and go from there. So hopefully that's not the case. Donald Trump, in my opinion, has put together an amazing team of nominees for his cabinet, and we'll see what happens from there on. That being said, social media, content, information, an extremely important part of that, as now the Supreme Court for the United States officially taking a look at the potential ban of TikTok that's set to take place on January 19th, one day before the inauguration of Donald Trump. After Donald Trump inviting the head of TikTok to Mar-a-Lago earlier this week during Christmas week to discuss the idea of trying to put an emergency halt on that ban, and the Supreme Court taking that one up. We'll see what happens. I'm starting to get the idea that free speech, regardless of where that source comes from, is going to be one of the more bigger priorities of Donald Trump in this administration. And I would say it's largely because of the influence of Elon Musk. I've said it before, and I will say it again very proudly, that Elon Musk, regardless of what his other political ideals are, I don't know what they are, other than like he's very efficient, which is why he's running the Doge department and why he's been the guy that saved free speech, essentially, for us to continue and fight for another day, with him buying X and releasing all the classified documents of the government and Twitter at that time that were colluding together in order to try and censor and silence and suppress a lot of content during the COVID-19 pandemic, that he essentially saved the idea of free speech. Doesn't mean that it's done. We have to continue to fight, but he saved it and allowed us to fight for another day. Could you imagine? He never bought Twitter and Kamala Harris became president. And the artificial intelligence, the mainstream media, the alternative media sites that would have been completely suppressed and shut down. Could you imagine the content control that we would have? And that's a cause for concern. Brendan Carr is the FCC nominee for the Trump administration coming up. He was on Fox recently, earlier this week, talking about that freedom of speech concept.
You know, for me, first thing is get with President Trump and his team and make sure I understand 100% what their agenda is. After all, he's the one that was elected, his cabinet, his administration, to reflect his priorities. But as you noted, combating tech censorship is going to be one of the top priorities for me. You know, we need to restore Americans' right to free speech. And you mentioned Facebook and other companies. They've been part of a censorship cartel that have worked with advertisers. They've worked with government officials to censor the free speech rights of everyday Americans. And that's got to end, because censorship isn't just about stopping words. It's about stopping ideas. America is a country of founders, of people that have pushed boundaries, pushed frontiers. They've innovated. And when you silence speech, you silence ideas. And we need to unleash America's prosperity again. That's why you feel this vibe shifting in the country, where people know President Trump is about to lead another great American comeback, because this wet blanket of government control is going away and our economy is going to flourish again.
Yeah, I completely agree. You got to remember, the first time they tried to ban Twitter was under a bill, and I don't remember the name of the bill. It wasn't under the Department of Homeland Security. It wasn't under any defense agency. It was under the Treasury Department or the Commerce Department, where they were wanting to regulate not just TikTok, but they were wanting to ban any foreign-based social media site. And it had nothing to do with TikTok. Any foreign-based, meaning any social media site that had their servers outside of the United States. And I ask you the simple question, why would they do that? Oh, yeah, because they couldn't control the content. That's right. So where are we getting our content and information now moving forward, especially for the next generation? That's what we'll do with Ethan Watson right around the corner on your weekend edition for The Voice of Reason. Stay right here.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier. Truth, reason, and common sense. This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Welcome back into the program. So great to have you along for the ride as usual. All over the country, multiple radio stations, TV, live streaming, podcasting, no matter how you watch or pay attention to us. As always, we love you and appreciate you very much. Let's get into our latest and what's trending as we have our next guest on the line. The next generation, as you know, being a millennial myself, we're the ones now apparently handing off the torch to the next generation. And maybe they don't make as crazy as decisions as what we did as millennials. I always say it on the program. I apologize for my generation and what we've done across our generation moving forward. So can we get things back on track, and what's the next generation actually look like? And especially when it comes to social media and the echo chambers that we're in, the dialogue that we're having or the lack thereof, and the influence of actual mainstream media, as there was a new op-ed out inside the Gen Z social media echo chamber. What's going on there? Really happy to have on from Young Voices, the man himself, Ethan Watson. Ethan, how are you, my friend?
Not too bad. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, appreciate you jumping on the program. First and foremost, congrats on all the college stuff. That's exciting coming from KU right here in our flagship state of the great state of Kansas. The next generation, man, I'm telling you, I mean, there's a major gap between millennials and Gen Z, and it seems like hopefully your generation's starting to realize that millennials maybe weren't the brightest out there. What's the mindset right now for Gen Z?
I'll tell you what, immediately after the election, I saw this outpouring of outrage and these sort of unhinged posts from Gen Z that really gave me a lot of pause and a lot of concern for my generation, right? I saw people posting these oversimplified takes like supporting a convicted felon over a woman is bleeping insane, all this sort of putting people into categories, ridiculousness. And I was really appalled by that, but I think that bubble has been burst because in the recent weeks since that election, I haven't seen any posts like that, especially after the Daniel Penny verdict. I didn't see a lot of, resurgence of the BLM Black Square. And so I think that veil has been pierced. And I think Donald Trump's election was just such a monumental culture shift that people my age really woke up and realized, hold on, especially among us, like sort of upper class, educated, college age young people, we don't have a monopoly on compassion, and we have not actually seized the moral high ground. There's a whole other country out there that believes something different than us.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, the demographics show that Donald Trump did bring in more of the young vote than what Republicans traditionally do. And there's always that old adage, I'm sure you've heard it, that if you're young and Republican, you have no heart. If you're old and a Democrat, you have no brain. So there's always this mindset that the younger generation always likes to lean a little bit more towards the left. But Donald Trump really, like you said, did change that narrative and really blew that narrative to pieces because he did win over a lot more of the younger generation. So the fact they're not commenting and they're continuing with their rage and declaring their abstinence and wearing the pink hats, which there's always going to be that fringe, but it's not as vocal as what it was the first time around, is it?
No, it's definitely not. And I think the reason why there's so many people my age that are okay with being out and saying that they're Trump supporters, especially young men, is Republicans and conservatives, we are the counterculture today. It used to be that leftists were sort of the anti-establishment, going back to the hippies all the way up through Occupy Wall Street. But now leftists have controlled every major institution in this country since, as long as I can remember, Hollywood, the media, government, education, you can go on and on. It's cool and rebellious to actually be a Republican. Say, no, I like traditional family values. I think a man should marry a woman and then have a family, and then they should be upwardly mobile and work their way to the top. And that's like a radical thing to say these days. And so that's why I think a lot of young people are drawn to it, because we're naturally sort of rebellious. And also, we had some of the best years of our lives stolen from us during COVID by our liberal ruling elite. They sneered at us. They locked us down. They're arbitrary dictators. And that's what sort of got me into politics. And I thought, well, wait a second, I'm a human being with reason. Why can't I at least ask the question, why do I have to, stay inside and burn 2 years of my life, high school and college, because, a disease might hurt someone who's 65 plus and obese, right? And if you ask the question, you were smeared as a fool and unscientific. And I thought, I don't think this liberal elite really has it out for me. And that's when I really decided I want to be a part of this conservative counterculture.
That's really interesting. It almost made the young generation like yours actually wake up a little bit quicker and say, wait a second, usually we are progressive. We're the bleeding hearts. We want to change the world through our activism. But what's going on right now is taking away my childhood. What the heck's going on? I haven't thought about that aspect of it because obviously being older, my daughter, she's 10 now, but during that she had to do the homeschooling. And, we thought they were taking her childhood away, but your generation, you had to live through it when you're trying to be the activist and they were telling you you weren't allowed to be.
Right, exactly. And I think younger generations like your daughter will unfortunately down the line be impacted more by COVID, right? Like developmentally wise, like the masking and the no in-person classes. But my generation, this sort of late high school, early college age person, we were just old enough to like realize what was happening was wrong and to realize what we were missing out on. And that was what made all the difference for me. And I just remember, being told like, hey, like, why should I wear a mask when I'm walking around my dorm just so I can get inside with 8 other people in there and take my mask off? Like, this makes no sense. And people will just say like, shut up. Like, you don't know what you're talking about. And I had always, I like to think that every human being is worthy of at least the decency of an explanation. We live in a free country, a democracy. So every human being is endowed with reason and logic, and they are owed an explanation for the policies that run them. And no one gave us that. And it was a really confusing and frustrating time for me as a young person.
Yeah, that makes sense. We're talking with Ethan Watson. He's a contributor to Young Voices. Also, you can read his latest op-ed inside the Gen Z social media echo chamber. Let's talk about social media for a moment, because that's where a lot of that ran rampant. We weren't allowed to talk about vaccines. We weren't allowed to question the social distancing, the stay-at-home mandates, the mask wearing, whatever else that was going on at that time. Your generation, who gets the vast majority of your information from social media as opposed to the mainstream media right now, is there a dynamic shift, especially after Elon Musk purchasing Twitter and turning it into X, making it more of a free speech mindset? Is there less of an echo chamber than what there was before? And do you think that's changing the minds of your generation?
It's hard to say, right? Like, X has definitely moved to the right a lot since Elon purchased it. I think it's definitely more of a free speech space, but now you see leftist people fleeing to Blue Sky, which is, a satanic hellscape that I would never touch. But that's where a lot of them are hanging out these days. So the echo chamber is always going to happen online because the algorithms are designed to show you content that you enjoy and that you'll interact with. But I do think that the veil has been pierced a little bit because, a lot of people my age, they lived in this social media echo chamber where all they were was affirmed, right? Every time they would repost a black square for BLM or some message about Roe v. Wade that was horribly misinformed, all they got was a feedback loop of their friends saying, oh, I support this. Yes, 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 you're so brave. You're an ally. And anyone who didn't really believe the same things that they did was afraid to speak out because it felt so stifling. It felt like there was a consensus and they were the odd man out. Donald Trump getting elected changed all that. Actually, I think Donald Trump being shot really removed the taboo of saying that you support Donald Trump. After that moment, that's when I felt a lot more comfortable coming out and saying, I'm supporting Donald Trump for president. And I think a lot of Americans felt the same. You saw people, even like Mark Zuckerberg, saying that he thought that was courageous and an awesome scene, which it was. It was insanely courageous, that whole, the way he stood and raised his fist. But definitely Donald Trump has pierced that veil because now he's shown people that, hey, there's a whole half of the country out here that supports me. And yeah, these big Instagram accounts that are posting things like, oh, this election is essentially America's fun aunt versus a convicted felon. That's actually a word for word quote from one of these accounts, which is so hilarious to me. No one thinks Kamala Harris is the fun aunt, first of all.
Come on, she can drink a beer on late night TV, so I guess she's cool, right?
Right, exactly. Like, I don't think anyone had fun hanging out with Kamala Harris since like Willie Brown in California, right? Like, she's totally not, totally artificial. But I think what Donald Trump showed everyone is that, hey, these accounts, they have 5 million, 3.4 million followers, right? They've got a lot of people, but he won the popular vote by a crazy margin. He has the mandate to rule. And I think people my age, suddenly they realized we didn't understand this whole half of our country. And I've had people reach out to me that are across the aisle and ask me questions about, hey, what do you think about this policy? This is what I've always heard. What do you think about this? Now, I don't make them all into Republicans tomorrow, but there's definitely a lot more room for respectful discourse and learning about one another after that election.
That's good. That's good to hear, the fact that they're open to a conversation, because that's where the conversation starts. You can plant that seed and we can start seeing them actually wake up. On the other hand, there is the more fringe, like you said. I mean, we did see the rhetoric when Donald Trump had that assassination attempt, when we had people really, and I've been calling it on the radio, as the domestic abuser syndrome, saying, if you wouldn't be so radical and hateful, then we wouldn't want to have to kill you. And they really tried to put the blame on Donald Trump himself. And some people were totally okay with the idea of Donald Trump being assassinated. Now we have this issue with the assassination of the CEO of the healthcare company with United Healthcare, where we see the other side openly saying, well, they're the ones that destroyed the healthcare system, so it's totally okay and justified for these murders and for that type of violent outbreaks. Are we still seeing that kind of rhetoric, or do you think that's going to start calming down here soon?
I was hopeful that would calm down, but I think the assassination of the United Healthcare CEO really kind of disproves that. Right on the left, we have a tendency to paint enemies as evil people, not just people that we disagree with. I say we. I'm not on the left, but generally, the left looks at people that they disagree with as evil people. Right? They're here to hurt me. They're here to kill me, and that's why they sort of can justify the killing of a CEO. And when you talk like that, when Donald Trump is not just someone whose policies you disagree with, but he's someone who is literally the reincarnate of Hitler and Mussolini and Pol Pot all rolled into one. Of course, some nut job is going to take a pot shot at him, right? Like, that's not a surprising outcome. And I would have hoped that would have changed after the Trump assassination the first time. It didn't change. It didn't change after the Trump assassination attempt on the golf course. It hasn't changed after the CEO. In fact, it's increasing. And this is nothing new for the left, right? I mean, George Bush was literally Hitler. Ronald Reagan was literally Hitler. Bernie Sanders was talking about how the healthcare system was an instrument of human suffering. And then, someone went and shot Steve Scalise. So on the left, they have this tendency to paint people not just as opponents, but as evil human beings who want actual human suffering. And I think that is a hugely toxic thing. And unfortunately, I don't see it going away anytime soon.
Yeah, unfortunately, I agree with you. And let's remember that the side that's angry about the healthcare industry right now, they're the ones that created this system by allowing Obamacare to be implemented as well. Ethan Watson, hang on the line. We got to take a hard break here as we continue on with your weekend edition of The Voice of Reason. We'll talk about the healthcare industry, the next generation, and where we go from here. It's all coming up for The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier. Where Hoosier-holics gather every week. This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Yeah, welcome back into it. We got just one segment left here this hour on your weekend edition of The Voice of Reason. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year to you. We're still in limbo as we get ready for the new year of 2025. We are having a great conversation right now with Ethan Watson. He is a contributor to Young Voices, talking the next generation. What's the next generation look like and the outlook of what this country may be? Let's shift gears just a bit, Ethan. Let's talk about the Trump administration, the incoming Trump administration, and the cabinet picks, the wider umbrella, the Republican Party that has expanded its wings and really has branched out to bring in new individuals that normally don't have the most conservative views, I don't think, at least on all issues. But we're picking and choosing to be able to find people where they fit and we can all work together, which I think is what politics is supposed to be. You have Tulsi Gabbard. I don't always agree with everything she says. She believes in things like universal basic income. I don't agree with that, but I would agree with her on the foreign policy issue and not getting involved in a lot of foreign affairs. We have Bobby Kennedy. Don't agree with a lot of issues that he had, obviously, with the environmental issues that he stands for. However, I agree with his health issues and wanting to go in and just completely destroy the NIH and the FDA and everything else. Do you think that widening the umbrella, bringing in people that aren't normally Republicans, but do have some conservative views, at least on particular issues, is this going to help the Republican Party? And is this going to help a new Trump administration widening that base and maybe getting people on board supporting Donald Trump that normally and traditionally wouldn't have supported him?
Look, I don't think the never Trumpers will ever come over to the Trump side, right? Like, you're never going to have like the Jeb Bushes coming over to the Trump side because they have such this visceral gut reaction to Donald Trump. Like, they're stuck in the orange man bad Trump derangement syndrome feedback loop. But I do think by bringing in people like RFK and Tulsi, he can win over the middle ground, which is actually where the battle is fought in politics. And Donald Trump, on a fundamental level, he's not articulate, right? He's not very polished, but he understands politics. And he understands that as a politician, he cannot be an ideologue. His job is to cut a deal and move the ball as best he can. He's not there to be the most ideologically pure, which I think a lot of people on the right actually make the mistake of being. He's there to get as many wins as possible. And so that's why he's got this big tent Republican Party. He's taking in people like RFK and Elon Musk, who Elon Musk has also not historically been a conservative person. Yeah. He's got Joe Rogan on his side. He's got sort of populist left people. Even guys like Cenk Uygur are coming out now and saying, hey, let's work with MAGA. Let's work with MAGA because they see room for them in this administration. So I think it wins over a lot of sort of the middle ground. Obviously, the deranged, salivating never-Trumpers on the left or even on the right will never come over. But it really just shows that the Republican Party is the new party of inclusion. Not inclusion in the sense that we're going to tolerate all of your degenerate, strange, weird behavior, the transgenderism and all that, but the party of inclusion of we're going to take you in if you're a reasonable, decent person, and we're going to cut a deal and work towards a common goal. And that's really why I think, Democrats don't have a monopoly on compassion. Republicans have it too, and we just place it in a different spot than they do.
Boy, isn't it nice? I love seeing it. I love seeing the fact that everybody's migrating towards this way, and now it's popular again. It's cool to be a Trump supporter and part of the MAGA movement, and there's not a whole lot they can do. They've already dialed the notch up, and this gets into where the content comes from. I mean, your generation, like you said, majoritively gets it from social media, which is why it's dangerous to be in that echo chamber. The mainstream media is their own echo chamber, and they've already essentially shot their shots. They've already given the worst case scenario for Donald Trump. They've leveled that dial all the way up to 11. I don't know what they have left. I don't know what they can do to Trump for the next administration, because you can't call him anything worse than what they've already done.
Right. It was insane to me if they ever did that, right? Because you can't tell me that Donald Trump is literally the second coming of Adolf Hitler when he was president for 4 years and really nothing bad happened. Like, where were the camps then, right? Like, it's hard for me to square that. But right. They made their final last-ditch effort this election cycle, and they failed miserably. Everyone laughed at them. They realized that these people are all clowns. And when you flip on CNN or MSNBC and you see them crying on camera and they think this is the end of our republic, or you see celebrities like Jennifer Lopez fleeing the country, they all think that this is hugely impactful. Normal people are like, yeah, you guys are weird anyways, and you don't really have anything in common with me. So, of course, I was never going to listen to you, first of all. You had Joy Reid coming out and saying, how could Kamala have lost this election? She had Beyonce supporting her and Taylor Swift. It's like, you still don't understand, do you? And I hope they keep this lineup, because if they keep saying this, we will win in 2028, we will win in 2032, we will win in 2036. But I think they just don't understand that they are so far out of touch with average people like you and me. And Donald Trump, even though he's a billionaire, he understands the ethos of America. We like kind of the corny YMCA dance moves and working at McDonald's because we think that's charming and we think that's funny. Yeah. And we don't like being sneered at by elite.
Well, we have a ways to go for them to realize how unrelatable the other side actually is, and how popular Donald Trump really is, like you said, with some of the things he likes to do for his publicity stunts. We're out of time, though, Ethan. As Ethan Watson, contributor to Young Voices, we appreciate you very much. Happy New Year. Merry Christmas to you. Let's get you back on the show again real soon. We got lots more coming up as we wrap up this hour of The Voice of Reason. Don't go anywhere for your weekend edition